If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Martha, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 307 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Welcome to what's sure to be the most classic episode of all time. We're going to be laughing from the beginning to the end with my guest, George Schlatter. That's right. The legendary George Schlatter is here. Best known for creating Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, the American Comedy Awards, and author of Still Laughing, A Life in Comedy. That and so much more coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, Phoebe Sutton was here last week. That's right, showrunner for Cheers. Episode 306 awaits you. So many great stories. But because you love great stories, I've got some teed up for you right now. George Schlatter is sharing a lifetime of memories with us, and that's coming up right now. All right, I'm excited to introduce you to my next guest. Legendary television producer and director, brought us Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, Real People, the American Comedy Awards, The Cher Show, Judy Garland Show, those and so many more of the greatest events ever on television. Now author of Still Laughing, A Life in Comedy, coming to us from beautiful downtown Burbank. Please welcome to the show, George Schlatter. Hey.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you. That's quite an introduction.
I could have gone on and on and on and on, but I wanted to kind of save some time so we could actually talk.
That's all right. It was a good introduction, and some of it's true, so let's go.
So, loved your book. And, I got to say, I was watching Still Laugh-In on Netflix the other day with my mother-in-law, who I will say, while I'm excited to speak with you, I don't know that I match the excitement that my mother-in-law has when I mentioned to her that I was talking to the creator of Laugh-In. She just started going on and on and on about all the memories.
I've always been big with mother-in-laws. That sounds wonderful. Tell her hello.
I will tell her hello. I'm from Detroit, couple Detroit connections on Lily Tomlin, Artie Johnson, both from Michigan.
That's right. Two of my favorite people.
Lily Tomlin, how did your relationship begin with her? Because I know she loves you.
Lily Tomlin had done a couple of projects that did not work. And so she was very discouraged and was leaving to go back east. And she came in for one more interview. And she came into my office, sat down. We were there for 3 hours. And she became all of these different people right in front of my eyes, right? I couldn't believe it. I fell madly in love with it. She said, well, what do you want to do? You want me to do the show? I said, I want you to do all of the shows. And only in that format where we did bits and pieces could she be one character and then become another character and another character. And she became a main part of the success of Laughing.
Yeah, she's amazing. It's just amazing how many iconic people, things, catchphrases, everything. The impact, I think, still today. Artie Johnson also, who after leaving Laugh-In was back in Detroit and did the first season of a local show called Hot Fudge.
Artie was also another multi-character person. See, it was fortunate that format allowed us to do all of those same people doing different people and becoming different characters. So it was very fortunate for us to have that format and then to find Artie and Ruth and Joanne and Lily and Goldie. I mean, it was an amazing period of my life to have found all of those people and have them all get along. And they all got along. They all liked each other. So they played off of each other. So it was quite an adventure.
That is amazing. I loved reading about and kind of learning about the origin of Laugh-In, kind of grew from the time, and I guess we could talk about how you were doing the very first Grammy Awards. And then it sort of became kind of a pivot to, I'll do it one more time, but you got to let me do my thing.
That's right. Well, the Grammy Awards didn't exist. We called it the Best on Record, and there was no receptacle for to celebrate all of those careers. So I said, I'll do an award show. We won't call it the Grammys. We called it the Best on Record. But I wanted to do one more show my way, and that became Laugh-In. And we didn't know. See, it was free fall. because they didn't want it. It was opposite Lucy and Gunsmoke, which were the number 1 and 2 shows. And here we came with this a barrage of new talent and new ideas and political, semi-political, lightning fast. At first they looked at it, they didn't really like it. They said, this isn't a television show. I said, it's a new television show. And so by the 3rd week, the public caught on to it. And they said, wow, this is not just a show, this is an adventure. And we had a good time.
So originally they kind of put you up as a sacrificial lamb in a way, right? Up against Lucy and Gunsmoke. They're like, all right, well, we'll let you have this.
And they put laughing in there until they could get a real show ready. They didn't even have the facilities to edit it or to shoot it because it was so many bits and pieces. And a wonderful woman by the name of Carolyn Raskin developed many of the editing techniques that we now have, just those bits and pieces. And some of the cuts were so fast, there was no way to edit that, but she developed the system, which is now the way they edit. It was a time when the public was ready for something new, somewhat like now, by the way. We're hungry now for something other than what we have, something that's colorful. All the colors now you see are black, black and white, because it's easier to shoot. We need something colorful. We need music that's happy, and we need shots that are so short that they grab your attention span. All of that is ripe for a new adventure now, and I'm thinking about it. So I may give it a shot.
Well, if anyone can do it, I'm sure it is you. All right, so you have this new show up, and it's all going great. Eventually, you replace Man from U.N.C.L.E., right? So eventually, you're knocking shows off.
Right away, they had nothing to put on. Yeah.
Because really what Laugh-In was an experience, right? You're creating this new experience for people to enjoy. What were the inspirations and some of the things that you were drawing from and then growing from to just even create this?
Partially, it came from my own minimal attention span, and there was a vacuum. I mean, it was all the same thing, the same colors, the same people, the same music. The editing techniques didn't exist. So it was my own minimal attention span, which I'm pushing right now with you. Got to be careful. But we needed an adventure, and I think we do now, too, because now when you think about it, late night is all the same colors, all the same people, all the same subject matters. And we're ready now. Jimmy Kimmel does some great things, but we're ready for an adventure. We're ready for something that expands your mind, that doesn't just feed on what's there now. And it's going to happen because out of that vacuum comes new, comes creativity, comes experience, and comes excitement and gamble. See, Laugh-In was a big gamble. There was no way that show was going to work. He said, people won't understand it. So I said, look at this. We took us to a grade school and ran it for the kids, and they laughed. Now, they didn't get it all, but they got some of it. Running it for a grade school was part of what got me the permission to run it on the air. Politically, I mean, come on, you can't get funnier than Richard Nixon, unless you go to Donald Trump. Oh, boy. How about that for a cartoon, right? Boy.
Ay, ay, ay.
Oh, yeah. Ay, ay, ay.
So I know you joke about getting Richard Nixon elected for having him come on and say, sock it to me.
Said, sock it to me, and it was with disbelief. And we had to get like 6 takes. He said, yeah, this comedy thing, new for me. Sock it to me. Yeah, that's right, Mr. Nixon. So he came and did it, and he said that it helped get him elected, and I've had to live with that.
I was watching an interview with you as well, talking about Richard Nixon and how, while you got him elected, it also was part of the downfall of the show later when they didn't like how political your show was, and it was becoming a threat to him.
This is true. And but you see, when you say they didn't like, if you start, any success starts out with words like they didn't like. It's a vacuum. You see, interesting. When a child is born, you don't have to teach it how to eat, sleep, cry, and laugh. It just automatically laughs. We don't know what he's laughing at, but we knew that child laughs. Why? The brightest ones laugh more than the dumb ones. So part of our culture, it's part of our physical makeup that we must laugh. And I'm not just talking about my honeymoon, but comedy's a major. Ask Norman Lear. What was the phenomenal success of Norman Lear presenting people that had never been, political viewpoints that had not been on? And Norman Lear was a big part of our success because he knocked down a lot of walls that were still up when we came on. And then when Norman came on, what we were doing became more acceptable.
In the Netflix special, you're sitting with Norman Lear. We're watching the Still Laughing. Rest in peace, Norman Lear.
I absolutely idolized Norman Lear. And that hat was great, right? And Norman Lear was a very serious fellow. We don't recognize that behind all of those jokes, behind all of those outrageous political, non-political characters, there lurked a very serious mind. I love to hear him talk because when you realize that man was responsible for so much comedy, for knocking down walls, barriers that hadn't been there before. We'd never had a character like Archie Bunker. And here came Norman Lear with this guy, shut up, Edith. I mean, it was because there was nothing there, we gravitated towards it, and they got those enormous numbers. But Norman Lear was very brave, was one of my idols.
And between the two of you, you did a lot of groundbreaking.
And it was dangerous. It was dangerous. And because they had a meeting every week. I had a meeting every week with the censors and with the network and with Herb Schlosser. And they called up and they had a meeting with Herb Schlosser. And they said, Herb, he's doing this. He did this. He did this. He said, I'll talk to him. And I'd go in and Herb Schlosser said, I've had another complaint, a lot of complaints from the censors. And I said, what do you want me to do? He said, do just what you're doing. And that's when we got the permission to try all of that stuff. Try all of those psychedelic colors and those fast cuts. The cuts were so close together, it was impossible to edit it with the technology they had then. Carolyn Raskin developed all kinds of new devices and new techniques that allowed us to have those cuts that fast. See, we can accept that because we now are used to being bombarded with information. And so we really want more information. We want it faster. I'm surprised that there are not more shows reflecting the minimal attention span and the hunger for information. I'm surprised that people aren't being more adventuresome.
But you're right. I mean, what you were inventing with Laugh-In is now what they call hooks and everything on social media. If you don't get someone in the first seconds, then you lost them, and even to a fraction of a second. So the whole style of that would look like it was just matching what today is, even though you were inventing it back then. But yeah, I imagine it would be blowing up on TikTok and all that kind of stuff. It'd be Laugh-In clips would be made for social media now.
Take the phenomenon of your own popularity. Whoever thought you would have that kind of an audience, that kind of popularity in Detroit? Detroit manufactured cars. They didn't manufacture humor or comedy or jokes. So there was a vacuum there. And into that vacuum, you came with all of these shows and all of this airtime because we were hungry for it.
When you were talking about the quick edits, that reminded me of a story in your book where you talked about having the first nipple on TV. Janet Jackson's got nothing on you.
Well, what happened was we were shooting out in the park. And in order to get all of that stuff done, we were shooting in different areas in the park. And this area we were doing one thing, and then on the other side. And they'd finished what they were doing on one side. And Judy Carn, it was impossible to have Judy keep her clothes on all of the time. She was truly an outrageous little performer. And so she took off her top. And so the artist at that point painted petals around her nipple, right? And they put it on. And I said, hey, guys, you can't do that. And they said, well, what? I said, don't tell me what. You can't have a nipple on television. So they said, oh, okay, sorry. I said, but you can if you do it fast enough. That shot got tighter and tighter. Finally, the network looked and they said, what is that? I said, I don't know what that is. So eventually, when you could stop frame television, they figured out that it was indeed a nipple. But I didn't know that. But they must have gotten one by me. It was that feeling of naughty, that feeling of adventure, that feeling of we were getting by with something. And the same with the political humor. I did a show. Lou Wasserman, who was head of MCA, called me one day, and I used to book the shows at the Frontier Hotel in Vegas. That was part of my long and shady career before I became respectable. I was working in Vegas. And he said, book Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan wasn't even in politics at that point. So I booked him into the Frontier Hotel, and he didn't do anything. So we booked him in with this act, 5 guys, and he was hosting it. He'd done a movie with Bedtime for Bonzo where he worked with a chimpanzee. So I found this act of 5 chimpanzees, and we put it on Ronald Reagan with the 5 chimpanzees. And what happened was one night we had to hold the show because of some people arriving late. So we locked the door, and finally they said, okay, now. Well, now meant that these chimpanzees had already completed their act, and now it was playtime. So they got loose in the Frontier Hotel. You can imagine 5 chimpanzees in the lights on stage, and one of the chimpanzees had developed a romantic attraction to the band leader. So he was ready to consummate that relationship on stage. And it was absolute pandemonium. The owner of the hotel, I said, that's great. Have him just do that. I said, no. You don't understand. That was not an act. There were 5 gorillas loose in a saloon. You can't, So he said, well, tell the actor to do less time. Ronald Reagan never really forgave me for booking him into a show with 5 gorillas. Ronald Reagan did not see the humor in having to work for 2 weeks with 5 gorillas. And then when he got into Washington, he realized how many gorillas he had to work with. That too. See, adventure. There's no adventure to doing something again. The adventure comes in doing something for the first time, doing something that wasn't expected and was particularly unpredictable. That's what I'm looking for more in television. We're doing that a lot now, but not really with humor. Humor is the last frontier because humor is dangerous. You can tell a story, and if no reaction to it, you're okay. But you tell a joke and there's no reaction, you're in trouble. If you're just hanging out there, silence is the worst reaction you can get, right?
Silence is a slap in the face to the comic. One disappointing story in the book, while you were successful getting the first TV Nipple, you were unsuccessful getting Barbara Eden's navel on Laugh-In.
We for some reason, there are certain body parts that are out of bounds. Again, there's nothing wrong with seeing a nipple or a navel or a whatever, right? But just seeing it when you don't expect to see it, and the surprise. Surprise is something we're lacking in television now. I mean, you can hear a Donald Trump interview, and you know exactly what he's going to say. Biden, exactly what he's going to say. There's no surprises. But if you walk in, Donald Trump doing a monologue, you put a drummer in there with him. When he says a joke, you do a rim shot, you realize the man is a comic. He's not a president. He's not a politician. He is a comic. I don't think he's funny, but I think he's so weird that he's almost funny. But Biden is a lovely, lovely man. He's not funny. The danger with Biden getting reelected, he needs a joke writer, I think. Now I'm going to get you canceled, right?
No. Where is your political? Because I know you did George W.'s inaugurals, 2 of them.
Yes.
Right? You talked about Ronald Reagan. So are you just an equal opportunity? The right guy is the right guy?
See, it's like putting the enemy in the fort. I mean, they came to me and they wanted me to do the inauguration. I said, I'm not even crazy about the man. Why would I do the inauguration? I said, please. And so my agent, Tony Fantosi, said, please. Mr. Wasserman had asked for me to do it. So I said, okay. So I did it, a bit of reluctance. We wanted it to be funny, and it was. And so then I got Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was, to get the world's champion come on a presidential inauguration was unheard of at that point. And so they asked Ali, they said, why are you doing this for George Bush? He said, I'm not doing it for George Bush. I'm doing it for George Schlatter. Well, that rang around the White House too. But we wound up great friends. See, if it's predictable, you're in trouble. If it's unpredictable, you get their attention. That's the secret. That's the secret. Comedy awards came on. There was no comedy award. There were comedy awards, but there was no show. So we had to go and we had to travel all over getting people in different parts of the country where they were working to accept the award. Then after we did it a few weeks, then a few years, then the Best on Record was what we did, and that became the Grammy Awards. Again, break the rules, have fun. Tell the emperor, and that's what we long for now.
Dan Rowan and Dick Martin, how did they become the namesake for the show?
Well, what happened was the original format, the original concept I had for Laugh-In was that it was without a host, that it just happened. Jim Ellers at the time, he's a bright man, said he would buy it, but he said we had to have a host because it was just too unusual. So we went to Rowan and Martin, who were a great nightclub act, and they just really opened the show, closed the show, and did like the news in the middle of the show. And that made Timex comfortable. And by the way, it worked for the show too, because they were the only kind of sane, controllable element in the show. And it worked. They were a great nightclub act. Dan was straight and Dick was silly. Well, Dick would go out there and talk for 10, 12 minutes. And we'd take about 2 minutes of that and say, meanwhile, in another part of town, we would cut to the cocktail party. They did work. And I've always been grateful to them for not having to do too much time, for not making sense, because that's what worked. Nonsense has a great appeal.
Yeah, definitely all worked. Did they get along? Did those two get along? From your book, I kind of frenemies.
They weren't really friendly. They never, when they'd finish on stage, they really wouldn't talk to each other, see each other until they walked out on stage the next week. And hi, Dick, and they would go. Whatever worked is what you focus on. I would love to take the credit for it, but I wasn't. I was against it. But I did it anyhow, and when they came out, it worked, and they were attractive, and they were straight. They wore tuxedos where the rest of the cast was in silly clothes. It was a barrage of great colors and music. Ian Bernard did unusual instrumentation and unusual music. And if you go for what doesn't exist, and put that in and give it a shot. Experiment with it. We hunger for that. We hunger for adventure. Laugh In was like a free fall. And when you think about Norman Lear's a phenomenal success, he did people who were really unappealing, unattractive, unacceptable. Archie Bunker was a mean, nasty, ugly, but we needed it. And what he was saying, half of the country agreed with Archie Bunker. And into that vacuum exploded this phenomenal success. And into that then came all the other Norman Lear successes. I worship Norman Lear. He was great.
He was the best.
Yes, he was. Yeah. I long for that now. I long for somebody to walk in now and say, oh my God, did you see what he did last night? How long has it been since you heard anybody say, hey, wow, did you see what happened last night? No, we know what happened last night.
It's hard now with like Twitter and everything, or X or whatever you call it, the social media. Things come at people so fast. They don't get it as a communal moment like that anymore. Things go viral early, and then so nobody's experiencing things at exactly the same time. And there's so many things to experience now.
Yeah, speed helps it because we're bombarded with so much information that we can absorb much more. If you take speed and couple that with humor, then you've got something really, because we're hungry. We're hungry for something, you know?
Question, Goldie Hawn question. Goldie Hawn was a go-go dancer when you hired her. Talk to me about the relationship you had with her. And then basically season 3, she's an Oscar winner.
Carolyn Raskin came up and she said, there's a girl dancing on the Andy Griffith Show. You got to see her. And I said, I'm not using dancers. I'm using comedians. You've got to see this girl. And I went down and I called up Goldie and she came and I remember she sat in this big red leather chair and there was this little blonde person. And she said, well, I'm not a comedian. I'm a dancer. So we gave her an introduction to do and she screwed it up so bad. And it was hysterical. She said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll do it again. No, Goldie, that's going to be just fine. And from there on, we never let her rehearse. Goldie's one of the brightest people you've ever met. But what we did to her made her appear to be dingy. We had more fun confusing Goldie. She was a magical, magical personality. She still is. But we had fun with Goldie and Ruth and Joanne and Lily. Oh, and put all of those people in a room and they all complimented each other. And you saw a combination of people that when you think about it, with all the television we have now, that doesn't exist. That relationship between people and the sense of fun and the sense of adventure, I long for it.
Your idol, Norman Lear, I think, went to the day he died.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Norman was an adventure up until the day he died. We went to his wake, and there were people there with such an adoration and such love. Why? Because he was an adventure. He had the career, the guts to try it. I miss that today. Do you see it anywhere else that Norman had what he was doing?
I don't. Hopefully it'll start, like you said, hopefully it'll start to emerge again.
Well, it has to. See, out of that comes creativity. Panic breeds creativity and disaster breeds humor. That sounds like a weird thing. You know what he just said? Disaster breeds humor. Okay, yes, it does. There's very little funny in the earthquake, but maybe a week from now, you'll figure something to laugh at. We must laugh. Laughter is a panacea. Laughter's the release. And I don't see it today. I see it in politics, but I put it there. We need to laugh. We need to not just make fun of, we need to have fun with. And it'll happen because out of a desert comes a well of creativity and fun. Adults must laugh. It's part of our body function. You have to laugh. Otherwise you'll shrivel up and die.
I agree. I think if the world, I think the issue right now is people aren't laughing at the same things. We all have to kind of start rowing in the same direction and start to find that universal stuff and realize that we're not making fun of the other person when we're laughing at situations and sort of just see the craziness in the world together. And that'll help us all move forward.
We don't all have to laugh at the same thing. We all have to laugh at something, find something. And you see the guy walking down the street, not funny, with a hat on, right? You see a kid with a snowball, not funny. But when you see the guy with the hat and the kid with the snowball, you say, uh-oh, there's going to be something. That breeds humor. And a pratfall. Why is a pratfall? People falling down is not funny. Yes, it is. It depends upon if the person falling down is a big, old, fat guy, and you watch him fall, automatic laugh.
I think there is nothing funnier in the world, George, than somebody walking into a glass that they didn't see, like a glass door. Nothing funnier in the world. As a matter of fact, my daughter did that once at a restaurant. Anyway, But I totally agree. I totally agree. We all need to start laughing together.
We must laugh. I wish right now I could think of I could think of something funny because I'm not too sure we're getting too many laughs with this interview.
The interview is about exploring and talking about the amazing things you did. So don't worry about that. Sorry to interrupt, but we have to take a quick break. I do want to thank everyone for their support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my interview with George Schlatter. We're going to talk a little American Comedy Awards, and we're back.
Well, we did a lot. We did the comedy awards. One day said, I want to do a show of just comics. They said, what? I want to salute comedy. And they went, well, how's that going to work? Comics introduced comedy. No, comics do comedy. And eventually we did the comedy awards and just for laughs. And eventually a woman called me up and she said, we're opening this museum in Jamestown. And could I send her anything from Laughing? I said, yeah. And she looked, she said, this is great. Do you have anything else? And her name was Journey. And I said, else? Lady, I have a warehouse full of else. What do you mean? So I started sending her material, and jokes and comic awards and off-balance comedy and off-color and whatever. She said, wow, this is great. And I kept saying. Eventually, I sent her $1 million in all of my comedy. So now in Jamestown, there's the theater there, and it's the George Schlatter and Jolene Brand Schlatter Comedy Theater in Jamestown. And all they present in this 38 acres is comedy, stand-up comics and sight gags and whatever. And everybody ought to take a visit to it because it's the only place in the world devoted entirely to the celebration of the people who made us laugh. And we must have it. So people should visit Jamestown. And I'm proud of what we did because it was the only place devoted entirely. Enjoyed it. You can imagine now building an entire theatrical complex devoted to stand-up comics, sight gags, and down in the basement, they have the Blue Room, where the comedy that cannot be done on television, devoted entirely to blue humor. Sounds weird. It is weird, but it is funny. I'm proud that we got involved in that before I decided to take my dirt nap. So there in Jamestown is this one entire community devoted entirely to the celebration of people who made us laugh. And it's not all politicians.
George, that is amazing that you created that with your wife. Is it true? Is it true Jolene came up with or convinced you to use Sock It To Me?
Yeah, and Jolene, we met Ernie Kovacs at a party, and Ernie Kovacs fell in love with my wife, Jolene, and he wanted her on all the shows, and she never knew what she was going to do. He'd just call her and say, come on over at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and she'd get all dressed up and never had any idea what she was going to do, and Ernie gave her all kinds of crazy things to do. She was in a bathtub, and she's sitting in the bathtub, and a periscope came up in the bathtub. I always loved that. But she did that, and then she did Zorro and Guestward Ho and a lot of other series. But her relationship with Ernie Kovacs is one that I cherish. And Jolene is a major part of my success and my security. And we have two daughters, AJ and Maria. AJ trains kids to ride horses, and Maria teaches actors. I mean, Maria devoted comedy. She's working with Dolly Parton. I'm proud of both of my daughters, and I'm proud of my wife. Jolene, I would not be where I am or do what I do or have enjoyed the success I have. Because Jolene can always look at me and say, George, this time you went a little too far. So I back off a bit to the major part of our... Hi there.
Hello, go ahead.
This is Martha, the other reason for my success.
Hey, how are you?
Jolene, we should have had Jolene on here because she looks great, still looks like my child bride because we're married 65 years. Jesus, 65. Whoever thought I'd live that long? Nobody.
It's amazing. I tell you, reading the book, it's clear, like just how much you love and treasure your relationship. So I thought you don't see that a lot.
I did a joke and I said, I just finished my first book and next year I'm going to read another one. We put together this collection of just memories and I just talked into a dictaphone. And then this woman that just walked in, Martha, started typing all of this. And then I remember that John Max is one of the best comedy writers in all of show business now. Took all of those stories and cut them down into readable chapters, took out the stuff that had to do with my shady past, took all of that out so that I don't appear to be, a gangster. Like my early life, I knew some colorful people, but the book is not about them. It's about the people that have made us laugh. Some of them made us laugh too, but the book is a celebration of the things I did where I had a good time.
It's an amazing book. Just let me give that Still Laughing, A Life in Comedy. I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Thank you. I'm surprised at the reaction because they wanted me to write a serious book about comedy and a serious book about some of my colorful relationships. And that's not what it came out. It came out just funny recollections. And let's face it, when you live this long, you have to have run into some funny situations. And Jolene helped me, and Jolene put up with me, tolerated this long and shady career. Luck had a lot to do with it, but luck and guts combined properly, you can come up with Still Laughing.
No, I loved it. It was written like I love. It was to the point, not very long chapters. You kind of you hit and then you hit another story. It was definitely a fun read. Speaking of which, let me ask you a question. I don't know if I read this. I don't know if this was in the book or not, but I read this. Is on Laugh-In, right? So you had Judy and Joanne and Ruth and Goldie and Lily. A lot of people that would be considered comedy divas. At the time, I know they were just unknowns and becoming household names. But it was Artie Johnson that needed a special placement in the credits.
Oh, sure. Well, Artie would show up, and Artie didn't want to come out of the dressing room until we were ready for him. So he sat in the dressing room and did crochet, right? And then he would come out of the dressing room as different characters. And each one of them was a true creation of an original. But then when he came out, Bob Hope was the show hadn't come on yet. And Bob Hope came in to do cameo line, sell his show. He would go to all the different shows and appear just to sell his own specials. And so we sent Artie Johnson out there. So here's Hope coming back from all of the armed forces, all of the political, the military installations. And he's walking, and here comes this little Nazi. And he had never seen Artie before. And he said, Mr. Hope, every Christmas we waited for you in the bunker and you never came to. And Hope looked at the body and he said, what are you, in a foxhole? And he stood there, and for 5 minutes, Hope and Artie Johnson ad-libbed some of the stuff that we thought Bob Hope was doing all the time. And it was hysterical. And from there on, the Hope wanted Artie on all the time. But Artie came in as all different characters. He'd be French, he'd be a German, he'd be a termite, he'd be everything, any character. And each one, every time he came out of the dressing room, was a different character. As was Ruth Buzzy, by the way, and Lily. They all, every time they come out of the dressing room, they came out as different characters. And either we had written something, or when they were on stage, we invented something. And Lily Tomlin was that phone operator. She'd call, and people were really scared of getting a phone call from Ernestine. It's just, Lily would snort and say, it's Mr. Vidal. She called Gore Vidal, Mr. Vidal. And so people were very nervous about getting a phone call from Ernestine Tomlin. And delighted to get a call from Goldie. Goldie was just absolute warm. We did a discussion once about Goldie and Dean Martin sitting on a bench arguing about which was the dumbest. Dean says, well, Goldie, they think I'm dumb too. And Goldie said, no, but I really am dumb. And they'd sat there for 5 minutes and discussed Goldie Hawn and Dean Martin, two gigantic stars, discussing which one was the dumbest. Unpredictable. Seize on accident and celebrate it. And then you can maybe hit joke.
Amazing. So 6 seasons of Laugh-In. You left after 5?
Yeah.
Is that to do Turn On?
Yeah, well, it was to do any one of the other adventures. My attention span is somewhat minimal, and I have to do other things. And Turn On was one of my favorite shows, because when Laugh-In hit, the network said, we want to do another show that's different and unusual. I said, I've got a show for you. So I said, this is a show that makes no sense at all, and we're going to call it Turn On. And they said, great. So what we did, we wrote 8 scripts. We taped 2 shows. And when Bristol Myers saw the first show, they absolutely loved it. This is crazy. This is wonderful. The guy in Cleveland wanted to keep Peyton Place on. He went on the air, started calling stations. When this first show went on the air, he called stations, said, we can't allow this show to go on. He wanted to keep Peyton Place. So he kept calling stations, said, they must get rid of this new show, Turn On. And so from New York to California, by the time we got to California, it had been canceled by all of these stations. And so only the first 15 minutes was ever seen. Some kids going through the archives just found some of the Turn On tapes. And now I understand on the internet, you can look at Turn On. It doesn't seem to be that wild today. It's still pretty wild, but it was the sense of adventure. Where do you see adventure today? If you can find it on the internet, you can see Turn On. It still seems like a bit of an adventure. What I really miss today is the feeling of accident, feeling of adventure, something that had not been tried before. And you want that, you go to Lily, you go to Goldie, you go to Ruth Buzzy, Joanne Worley. Those people came on as different characters and would try anything. I do kind of miss that. I miss that a lot. The feeling of accident, the feeling of the guy walking down the street and a kid with a snowball. You know what's going to happen. You just can't wait for it.
Oh, by the way, Turn On is on your YouTube channel. The two episodes are. I watched a little bit of the first one with Tim Conway,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's it's very fast cutting, and
Tim Conway trying to commit suicide. Now, that doesn't sound like the premise for great humor, but it was funny. You see Tim Conway trying to commit suicide, and he didn't make it. Where do you see that kind of adventure? Where do you look at television today and say, what's going to happen next? I think maybe this desert that we're in right now, creatively, I think it's going to be solved by some young guy sitting watching this saying, I think I can be funnier than that fat old man. And come on, give it a shot. Take chances and enjoy the process. Partially because I was married to Jolene, who would say, okay, George, you've gone far enough. Now, going to work in the morning was always a thrill for me because it wasn't work. And we were surrounded by all of these creative people, Gary Necessary and Ruth Buzzy and Joanne and Ruth and Artie. And they were waiting in the office, and we would come in and let's try this. And we would tape until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And right next door was Jolene taping with Ernie Kovacs. Where's Ernie Kovacs today? We need Ernie Kovacs. We need those outrageous, creative people who see life on a tilt. We need it right now.
George, so Laugh-In was obviously a huge impact on just the world and entertainment, but Real People is another one of your creations that also basically the start of reality TV, the invention of reality TV.
Yeah. Herb Schlosser said, George, we just did a show in New York on the streets of New York using these new, at that point, ENG cameras. They were cameras that were not tied to a tape machine. They said, can you do anything like that? We just went out on the streets and talked to real people. And they said, can you do anything like that funny? So I was skiing with Stein Erikson. And to see me ski, you realize why I chose a field in comedy. Oh, boy. So anyhow, I came back and I said, that's the show and we can do it. He said, okay, let's do a pilot. I said, I can't do a pilot. I need a commitment to do 6 shows to try out all of these things. And now, can you imagine today a guy, bad skier, skiing with Stein Erikson, telling the president of the network, I can't do 1 show, I need 6. And he said, go ahead. That doesn't exist today, but he did. And so we started taping on the streets and put that together into this thing, celebrating the people out there who are more interesting than the people who are in here. Hi there. So that's what we called the show. And we went out and we shot these people on the street and realized that the people out there are funnier, brighter, more interesting, more involved, more exciting than the people we were taping on television. So that's what happened with Real People, and it became a huge hit. And then we did also every week we did in the armed forces, we did 1 show a week, 1 episode a week of military, which is now the backbone for CNN with the heroes. But we did a hero every week. We felt that the heroes had not been celebrated. And then we had them all, everybody came in the studio, sat down, and we took chances. The only real gamble on television today, really, is you interviewing me. Now, how did that happen? I don't know, but they won't let it happen again. But I'm having a good time. I hope you can air some of this.
No, this is amazing. The American Comedy Awards, which you created, which are awesome. So there were 2 big winners in the first one. Bette Midler and Robin Williams, and Lily Tomlin won, Woody Harrelson won. But Robin Williams, you have great story with Robin Williams as well. You were connected with Robin Williams in the very beginning.
Well, Robin Williams, I saw Robin Williams on the streets in San Francisco. I was doing something else, right? We're using all young comics. And Robin Williams was on the street barefoot with a straw hat, coveralls, and a fishing pole. And he was hanging the fishing pole out all of the audience. And he said, I'm fishing for assholes. Now, that doesn't sound like funny to me, but it was then. And I said, this was, every time he said something, he became a different person. So I said, I want you to do this new show. And he'd never been on television. I said, but I want you to take a shower, clean up, get in some regular clothes. And so he came on, we put him on with Frank Sinatra. And Maud, they touched me like he knew me, Maud. And Frank Sinatra looked at Robin Williams and it was in awe. And he just cracked up. Well, Frank Sinatra's endorsement of Robin Williams helped launch that career. And we went on, and I was crazy about Robin. Every time he came on stage, he was a different person. We got lucky with Robin. We got lucky with Artie, with Goldie, with Ruth, all of those people. And they were not, the reason they were available is because there was no place in television for them. There was no place. Where are you going to put a man in a straw hat doing jokes to Frank Sinatra? But take a chance, and we did. That's what I miss television today. I miss the gamble. I miss the risk. I miss the guy on the high wire. And you're coming close, by the way. If any of this airs, you're coming as close to the gamble as we did, you know?
George, funny thing, you mentioned Robin Williams was barefoot, but is it what originally drew you to Lily Tomlin? She was tap dancing barefoot. There's something about you and barefoot future comedian.
Barefoot, yeah, well, yeah, barefoot and fish poles. It's like the gamble. Take a chance. And with Lily was leaving New York because she was unsuccessful in these 3 shows. She said, well, what do you want me to do? I want you to do those characters. She said, which one? I said, all of them. And Goldie, the thing about Goldie, Goldie was super bright, but her attention span was somewhat minimal. So anything we could do to distract Goldie wound up with her laughing. And that became a huge accident. See, we must treasure our accidents. We have to not predict them, but allow accidents to happen. I mean, like this interview. I mean, some of this may air. But
George, you're so funny. You know what? So with Robin Williams, you had a reboot called Laugh-In.
Yeah.
And then from there, you also had George Schlatter's Comedy Club featuring comedians and the same kind of quick edit vibe. I watched some clips of that. I love that.
We went out. We sent all the way across the country. We sent cameras, and we taped funny people who were funny in different areas of the country, and that became the Comedy Club. Again, see, you must laugh, and we as a society must laugh. That may be our salvation. That may be what can cure the dilemma we're in now. Bright colors, bright people, and funny subject matter, funny people, funny sound effects, and that will pull us out of the doldrums we're in now, I think. And if it doesn't, then blame it all on me. I've been to blame before.
I will blame you 100%. I loved your stories about Sammy Davis Jr., by the way, in the book. There's just such a rich history, helping him get a home and the special.
Sammy, when it was the Will Maston Trio with Sammy Davis, and Sammy here was this little black kid tap dancer. And so we started booking him at Ciro's and the Frontier Hotel. And gradually it became Sammy, the Will Maston Trio, starring Sammy, then Sammy Davis and the Will Maston Trio, then it just became Sammy Davis. But he was this enormously talented, not well-educated young man, this enormous talent. And so we put him together with Sinatra. Sinatra loved Sammy, and Sammy made Frank laugh. The secret to Sinatra was making him laugh, and Robin Williams could make Frank Sinatra laugh. It was dangerous. You want to make him laugh and he doesn't laugh, you have a problem. But we could make him laugh, and Robin could make him laugh, and Goldie made him laugh. Laughter's the panacea. Laughter's the thing that makes us get up in the morning or go to bed at night, depending on whether or not you're married to Jolene.
You hung out with quite, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, Dean, Judy Garland, doing the Judy Garland show, the Cher show.
I also had laughs with Sidney Poitier, and also had laughs with John Wayne. Those were people who you didn't expect to be funny. And that's the soil from which comedy can come. And with Sidney Poitier, when he laughed, the world laughed. John Wayne. I mean, the thing was, see, when we started doing Laugh-In, nobody knew what Laugh-In was. Nobody wanted to do the show, and we didn't have any money. And we would go out in the hall and stop people. And so I went out in the hall and talked to John Wayne. I said, would you do the show? And John Wayne stood, he said, I'm not going to do that show. Those crazy people. I'm not doing the show. Next thing you saw was him on the show saying, I'm not doing the show. Well, it sounds crazy today. It sounded crazy then. He said, you got John Wayne? What did he do? I said, he said he wasn't going to do the show. Now, the network today, then they looked at me, they said, you got John Wayne on the show saying he's not going to do the show. I said, yes. Well, we put that on the air, and it became one of our most famous. I'm not going to do that show. And it was crazy. And eventually he showed up wearing a blue bunny suit. Unpredictable. Do what they don't expect. And then once you have people's attention, then you can risk being funny. We must have more laughter. We must have more comedy. And that, if we're going to pull ourselves out of this sewer that we're in now, we're going to have some comedy. Out of all of this, it's difficult. It's difficult sometimes to be funny because it's dangerous. Because when you do a joke and it doesn't get a laugh, you are in trouble. Hopefully, some of what I'm telling you now will make people chuckle.
George, your life is so fascinating. It's just so funny. But Sammy Davis Jr. then came on and helped kind of, by the fourth episode of Laugh-In, helped kind of blew it up.
Sammy came on, and he came by the studio one night, and we were doing a thing in the courtroom. He said, George, remember Pigmeat Markham? I said, well, is he still alive? Pigmeat is still alive. And Pigmeat did a thing with Here Come the Judge. So Sammy put on a white wig, and he came across the stage doing, Here Come the Judge. Quiet, you all. Here come the judge, right? And it caught on that night. Sammy was leaving the studio. People in the hallway were saying, hey, Sammy, here come the judge. That became a catchphrase that flooded the whole country. And 2 days after that show aired, the Supreme Court justices came in on the way to the bench, and somebody at the back of the Supreme Court said, hey, here come the judge. And the court laughed. And it was the only laugh the Supreme Court had ever gotten up until recently. I go back to that again. When they said, here come the judge with the Supreme Court coming in. And they realized it was funny, making fun of the unfunny, making fun of the problem, making fun of the disaster. And there's more fun and love and romance and humor in the unpredictable.
Sorry to interrupt. Have to take a quick break. And we're back and headed to Motown. George, one more Detroit connection. Talk to me about Smokey Robinson.
Smokey was Smokey Robinson, and he was, we had fun with him. And see, all of those people, when Smokey came in to do the show, we had, trying to remember, who was it we did with Smokey?
I think it was you were a consultant on one of his shows, the Barry Gordy and stuff like that, yeah.
Well, I worked with all of those people. And then Stevie Wonder. Smokey came in to do the show, and we introduced him to Stevie Wonder. Now, Stevie Wonder, as you know, is blind.
Mm-hmm. I've heard.
He said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, you're going to work with Smokey Robinson's going to work with you, Stevie. And he said, what? I said, he's the new makeup artist. You know what? I said, he's the NBC makeup artist. What? I said, now be careful, because we don't know where he's going to put that makeup. And Stevie immediately saw the humor in this and went, oh, yeah, well, he put makeup on his face, on his nose, on his hair. And it was Stevie Wonder as the NBC makeup artist was a receipt of great humor. He had makeup all over him, See, again, a blind makeup man.
Brilliant.
It's what? When you present an idea and a network executive says, you're going to do what? You got a good idea.
So many good ideas. Oh, random trivia, true or false. At one point, you were involved with the Muppet Show.
Yeah. We did. And then that didn't work for a while, because it was. But I had great fun with the Muppets. I mean, the idea of working with puppets appealed to me. So we did a special with the Muppets. See, I did specials with everybody, but because of my own minimal attention span, I never went on and really pursued it. But we did the pilot for the Muppet Show with Jim Henson. It was great. And it went on to become the Muppet series. But my attention span was such that I couldn't continue doing it, because it was funny for me to work with puppets for a week or two, but to do that as a whole career was going to be kind of challenge the attention span. But Jim Henson did very well with it. But we did, a major nighttime show being hosted by puppets with a guy's hand up there, but it worked, and it became the Muppet series.
That's amazing. Yeah, you've done specials and Elton John, Goldie, Liza Minnelli, Michael Jackson, Jonathan Winters, Richard Pryor, Jackie Gleason.
It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it goes on and on and on.
I'll tell you who I love was Cher. I had more fun with Cher because she was a singer with Sonny. I wanted Cher to do different things. So we came on. It was her first appearance away from Sonny, and she was used to Sonny telling her what to do. So we came in, we read the script, and Sonny and Cher had never seen the show. The show hadn't been on yet. And Sonny, we noticed, was very uncomfortable because he was looking for Cher's. He said, where's the Cher's song? And I suddenly realized Sonny didn't realize there were not going to be any songs. It was all comedy. So I said to Billy Barnes, Billy, where's Cher's song? Well, Billy had just heard for 3 weeks that we weren't going to do any straight songs. And Billy said, Cher's song. I said, the Mountie routine. And Billy Barnes looked at me like, are you crazy? So we come in. I want you to hear this. It's a great Mountie. We went in the other room, and I said, Billy, write me a Mountie number for Cher. He said, what the hell? I said, when do you? I said, they need it now. So Billy Barnes in 15 minutes came out with Cher Bono singing a Mountie song, and Cher loved it. And from then on, Cher would do anything I was asking her to do it. And she was always late for rehearsal because she was having her fingernails done. So I called her Nails, and she called me Hammer. And she, okay, Hammer, I'll do it. But the advances with Cher, she's an enormously talented woman. It's great to see her career went on to become. But the beginning of it was do the Mountie number.
George, I mean, your stories are amazing. Your book is amazing. You spending time with me, I can't thank you enough for sharing these
I'm
stories.
enjoying this. I don't know who those people are back there, but I'm enjoying it. I hope they are too. How long have you been doing this?
A few years.
Well, congratulations. I think you do it very, very well. And you're putting up with a long and boring interview with the Hammer. See, when Cher called me Hammer, that kind of caught on because people were aware of the fact that I was somewhat strong in my convincing people to try things they hadn't done before. Okay, Hammer. And I love her. She's a magic of personality. And as was Goldie, as was some of the people we did with Liza Minnelli. It was great with Liza and Goldie together. It was wonderful. So it's just been a long and laborious career, populated with jokes, with failures, with pratfalls, some success, and the audience kind of waiting to see what was going to happen next, and was it going to be good, bad, funny, not funny, and we must treasure those moments. We must treasure our failures as much as our successes. And I've had abundance of both. We did the first show done in the Radio City Music Hall when you couldn't shoot. It was non-union. So we lined up the Rockettes and everybody, and we did in the Radio City Music Hall. We did it on the streets of New York when that was impossible to do. We did that with the Rockettes on the streets of New York. And we did Al Hurt. They wanted one more number in this show. And I said, I'm shooting everywhere around Rockefeller you could shoot. So I said, all right, give me Al Hurt. So I got Al Hurt to come into New York to do a song, a number, right? And Al Hurt says, okay, what studio? I said, no, meet me on the corner. So Al Hurt met me on the corner with his trumpet. And we went up 7 flights and a step ladder up the 8th flight. We were on the lip of the new Sperry Rand building, and it was bitter, bitter cold. And Al Hurt was going to play South Rampart Street Parade. And so we were rehearsing this South Rampart, because there was no place else for me to shoot in Rockefeller Center. And when we were rehearsing this, I looked over here in the background of the rehearsal. There's a guy lying down, and it was the night watchman. He'd come up to see what was the commotion on the 7th floor, and he'd had a heart attack. And so he died. And I said, well, I'm losing light here. How are we going to get him down? He said, we can't move him until the coroner comes. I said, why? They said, well, the coroner got to come and pronounce him dead. I said, look at the man is blue. He's not going anywhere. He's dead. Could you just move him 4 feet? Because he's in the shot. They said, no, you don't understand. You can't move until the coroner comes. And I said, okay, well, can you cover him with a blanket? Because he's in the shot. So Al Hurt's playing South Rampart Street Parade. The family's there crying and praying. The coroner's on his way. And and it's freezing cold. And so we did South Rampart Street Parade then, but for Chrysler. And so the man from Chrysler came and he said, what's that? I said, there's a body, sir. What is the body doing in Al Hurt's number? I said, he's just lying there. That's all he's going to do. Right? So anyhow, we covered him up, and they said, well, the man from Chrysler wants to see this. So I realized that the shot had Al Hurt in the shot, but in the background, there were these 2 feet sticking up, right? So the man from Chrysler ran. So I put my arm out, and my arm covered the 2 feet, so you couldn't see. But the 2 feet, sure enough, were in the shot, right? And so the man from Chrysler came, and my arm covered the shot. And but when it went on the air, here's South Rampart Street Parade, Al Hurt with the man, Chrysler's man, these 2 feet sticking up in the shot. Al Hurt, the next time I wanted to book him, he said, the contract said Mr. Hurt will be indoors, temperature will be above 50 degrees, everybody in the shot will be alive, right? It will be indoors. My successes and my failures are filled with accidents. Al Hurt was an accident. Sammy Davis was an accident. Frank Sinatra. I mean, all of those things, we must cherish the mistakes and the accidents and realize a mistake, an accident is only that far away from success. And sometimes I was further than that, but on occasion we came close. I've had a good time. I mean, even today, if you're going to air any of this, I don't know that any of this will ever wind up on the air, but I've had a good time with you and in Detroit, I've had good times in Detroit, which we're not even going to talk about now, but you have a good time.
I had a great time.
If you have a good time, people around you will have a good time. We must learn to celebrate our failures, which certainly will cause me great cause for celebration. I look at television today, and it's too perfect, and it's too much the similar. Saturday Night Live is the exact same show every week. Well, don't. Do it different. Do it surprise. And I think now, because we're kind of immersed in a desert, far as creativity and ideas. There's more shows, but there isn't any adventure. There isn't anybody trying something dangerous. And there will be. It'll be born out of desperation. When the ratings dip, people would say, wait a minute, I'm going to try something new. That's what really got me out of the valley. That's what really caused Jolene to stay with me, thinking I was going to improve. I was going to get better. Taking the chances, having fun. We would show up for work like it was a gigantic playpen. Out of that feeling of adventure, out of that feeling of accident, out of flying close to the flame, came some pretty funny stuff.
I'd say so. But I'm sure in the Guinness Book somewhere that the most funny stuff created. I mean, I'll tell you, between you and your idol, Norman Lear, the gifts that you've given to us is tremendous. So thank you so much.
I idolized Norman because he taking chances, and he was gambling. I mean, Maud, can you imagine B. Arthur, this enormous woman coming in that was Archie Bunker's enemy? Whoa, boy. Sanford and Son, Red Fox was not allowed on television because his act was too dirty. I did Red Fox's first show, too. So he said, how are you going to do that? You can't put Red Fox on. I said, I'm going to tape an hour with Red Fox, and out of that hour, I'll have 5 minutes that's usable because the rest of it was dirty. And so Red Fox came in, he did an hour, and sure enough, there was 5 minutes that was usable. He interviewed the first black president. And so that Red Fox interviewing a black president was itself. You can imagine now what that was like, right?
Absolutely.
See what the rules are and then break them. Then you'll get somebody's attention. And be funny. You better be funny because
gotta be funny. If you're gonna put it out there, be funny.
And if it doesn't get, there's nothing worse. I mean, like I'm proving in this last interview, than to do something you hope is funny and have it not get a laugh. That's dangerous because that's painful. Silence can be very painful, but the adventure, taking the chance, the risk, flying close to the flame, that's worth it. Because when you hear that laugh, whoa,
Amazing words, George.
Come out on stage with your fly open and the audience will say, you know, it flies on there, and you'll get a laugh.
Every time I walk on stage, I think my fly is open. It's
a dangerous way to make a laugh, but we must laugh. We have to learn to laugh again. That was my relationship with Sinatra. It was well worth it because I made him laugh. When Sinatra laughed, the world laughed. But if Sinatra didn't laugh, now you have a problem because you are in trouble. You get to know Jilly better than you ever wanted to know anybody.
You eulogized Frank Sinatra. That's how close you were.
Oh, boy. When at his funeral, Barbara Sinatra said, would I do one of the eulogies? And I said, no, Barbara, no. I don't want to do that. No. Me in the church, I'm not too sure about me doing it. She said, please do a eulogy. She said, okay, so long as I don't have to follow Gregory Peck. Okay, here goes the eulogy. Sure enough, Gregory Peck, right? And now, the next after Gregory Peck is me, I'm introduced by the bishop. I've met a lot of songkeepers. I've not met a lot of bishops. And so the bishop introduced, here's George Schlatter. And I don't know why. I didn't know what to say. So I said, thank you, Your Honor. Well, the place cracked up because I'd talked to a lot more judges than bishops, right? So when I called the bishop, Your Honor, and the place cracked up, then I was home, and I thought Frank was going to sit up in the box and say, come on, crazy, let's get on with it. But calling the bishop Your Honor made the whole Sinatra funeral cheer up a little bit because nobody ever called the bishop Your Honor. That's just one of the many adventures I had. But see, that's a mistake. It's a big mistake that you have trouble leaving that mistake. Calling your bishop Your Honor is something you will never recover from. But if you do recover from it, then it was worthwhile.
But making someone laugh at a funeral, in that sense, I bet a lot of people, their feeling was, you helped us get through this, because that's exactly what they would have needed at that moment.
That's it. Including Frank. Frank loved to laugh. He was a comedy junkie, but it was dangerous. You better be funny. And Jilly, Jilly was a piece of work. My long and suspicious career has been dotted with a lot of very colorful, funny people. Cary Grant. I had more fun with Cary Grant, because that facade was very thin. And he sent Cary Grant one night. We were at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and he went up. He said, I'll go get the tickets. And he goes up to the table, and the woman says, your name? Grant. First name? Cary Grant. She looked up. She says, you don't look like Cary Grant. He said, nobody does, right? Well, Cary Grant denying that he was Cary Grant. The room cracked up, right? Cary Grant didn't get a lot of laughs when he did that night. Again, take a chance, have fun, and know that laughter may be the second best feeling you can have. We won't get into the first best feeling because Mrs. Schlatter doesn't approve of my anyhow. But laughter is the panacea. Laughter is the cure-all. It's the Novocaine of life.
It is so funny.
I hope you can air. I hope you can air some of this. You know,
You're so funny, George.
you may even air part of this. So some of this, you ought to be able to take 5 minutes out
At
of it.
least 5 minutes. I'll apply the Red Fox algorithm to it. Get at least 5 minutes. Yeah.
That's right. 5 minutes at least will work out of this.
George, thank you so much for
Thank you.
everything.
This was fun, and I hope some of it worked, and I hope that you can air some of it. And if I ever get to Detroit, which we used to call Detroit.
Detroit City. Yep.
Yeah, we had fun in Detroit, which is another subject of another interview.
We'll do a follow-up interview.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can have fun in Detroit if you don't mind risking getting arrested.
It's amazing now. I don't know when the last time you were in Detroit, but it's a pretty cool place these days.
They had no sense of humor when I was there.
Now it's rocking pretty good. It's rocking pretty good.
Well, that's pretty good then. Congratulations. You've cured it. Okay, I hope you can air some of this, and let's do it again sometime if your career ever recovers from this
If my
interview.
career recovers. All right, let's end this. I think that I need to end it in one particular. Say goodnight, George.
Thank you. This was great fun.
Thank you.
See you again. All right, bye-bye.
All right, how amazing was George Schlatter? I know, so amazing. So many great stories. If you want more great stories, grab George's book, Still Laughing, A Life in Comedy. You will not be disappointed. We just scratched the surface here. All right, well, with the interview over, it can only mean one thing. I know, another episode has come to a close. Can't believe it. Huge thank you to my special guest, the legendary George Schlatter. And of course, a huge thank you to all of you for coming back week after week. You know it means the world to me, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.